Alright everyone, the Great Reset is here. Not the Klaus Schwab eat the bugs, sleep in the pods Great Reset, but rather the resetting of the RNC. The current co-chair, incoming, of the Republican National Committee is none other than Laratrump. Yes, the wife of Eric Trump. Link in the description. Great news. As I explained this morning, with regards to the possibility that Rand Paul could be the Senate leader, this is a step in a very good direction. The Republican Party was not always as it has been lately, pre-Trump mainly. That's a post-Reagan consensus that was built, and it's partially defined actually by Clintonian policies as well. It stood for globalism, it stood for America Last, it stood for lots of wars and nation building and world policing and all of the other unpleasant things in life that have screwed up our lives. That became the new consensus. This is considered democracy, by the way, by people that have two brain cells to rub together. Before that, the Republican Party was much more populistic than that. More averse to warmongering, although they're in the wake of World War II. Both parties definitely participated in the basic premise. The original protest music, did you know this? Most people don't. When they think of protest music from the atomic period, they think of a bunch of hippies singing about General Mao or something like that. I think of John Lennon or something. Have you ever heard of 50s folk? You'll find a hell of a lot of anti-atomic, anti-war, anti-globalist protest music that came from people that quite clearly were on the conservative end of politics. That was the original gangsta of atomic and nuclear era protest music. Sometimes it got censored, like Ain't I Right by, what was it, Marty Collins, I think it was. That's the protest music of that generation. It came from the right wing, actually. Did you know that the youth was more gung-ho for the Vietnam War than the older people? People that remembered the pre-atomic era were like, what the fuck is going on? You're gonna blow up the world. They just wanted to go out and farm their peanuts and shit like that. The youth was more gung-ho for it. You had that new youth consensus, and some of them were actually left-leaning at the time. I find it funny how people don't understand basic political history quite often. So I'm glad that Trump has effectively seized control of the RNC, because it was malfunctioning in 2020 and 2022. Again, you had Mitch McConnell, the outgoing Senate leader, spending a shit ton of money in a race where the Republicans literally could not lose. It made no strategic sense whatsoever. They threw Herschel Walker under the bus, he could have won. They threw Mehmet Oz under the bus, he could have won. Although, again, as I've pointed out, Fetterman is at least a chucklehead, so, I mean, it's not as bad as it could be. It's becoming the new Joe Manchin, only, you know, half a foot taller. It's very funny to see. They could have gotten Masters in there, etc. They could have done all these wonderful things, and there actually could have been an actual red wave, which was what was being predicted by most analysts at the time based on polling. But they sabotaged dozens of their own candidates. The old school Republicans, they love to lose. The basic premise is, we'll stand up on an issue that is meaningless, but we will stand down on issues that are meaningful. We'll stand up on issues where we know we can't win, but we'll stand down on issues where we've been handed on a golden platter an automatic victory should we pursue it. This has happened over the last half-decade alone on, for example, abortion. You ended Roe v. Wade. You had the opportunity to come out as a party and say, this is effectively a state's issue. That's what we fought for. That's why Roe needed to end. And leave it at that. Let the states hammer it out at the lower level. You could have done that. Instead, you got Lindsey Graham saying, well, I think we need a national abortion ban bill, and stupid shit like that. It didn't work. You were handed a victory. The left wing, the Northams of the party, of the Democratic Party, had given you a victory by insinuating that they were comfortable with abortion in the third trimester, which is something that only a tiny proportion of Americans support. They support effectively what Trump is now promoting, which is a cutoff of maybe 14 weeks or something like that, bringing the United States in line, by the way, with virtually the rest of the civilized world. It's pro-choice, but there is a cutoff there, unless your life is in danger. There's an exception for that, or for rape or something along those lines. And if you're held up in a basement for 15 weeks, well, we're not going to prosecute you if you decide to abort, because that's an extenuating circumstance, and there is wiggle room there. A lot of people tend to take up a very puristic line. I don't. I believe in the basic stratagem that Trump is putting forward. I am pro-choice, but there are exceptions to that. I do not believe in aborting in the third trimester. If viability is achieved, you get a cesarean section. And I don't know, if you can't take care of or don't want the baby, put it up for adoption. It's a sad situation. It's going to wreck that child's mentality potentially, but it's better than killing them. And it is a baby at that point. It's capable of surviving. Anyway, that's just one example. Education. You remember when the liberals a couple years ago were really suffering under this issue because Americans realized critical race theory existed. They started going to school board meetings, and they found that their 5-year-olds are being read books on sphincterbation and shit like that, and that they're using taxpayer money to bring drag queens in for explicitly sexualized minstrelsy, and talking about communism and crazy shit like that. They couldn't even believe it. And all of a sudden, for the first time in several generations, the Republicans took the fore on education as an issue. Which party would you prefer to run education? Oh, they're Republican, quite clearly, because the Democrats are nuts. What did the Republicans do? They stood down. They couldn't stand all of the winning that they were having, and so they stopped talking about the issue entirely. There wasn't a mumbling fucking word for several months before that election. They didn't talk about it. You were handed a goddamn victory, and you didn't drive it home. This is what Republicans have been doing for decades. After Reagan left office, you haven't had a winning momentum among the GOP until Trump. So the fact that Laratrump is now co-chair of the RNC hopefully is a sign that things are going to look up. Hopefully a sign that the old guard neocons, with Mitt Romney leaving and some of the neoliberals as well, like Manchin and Sinema, with them departing, hopefully you'll have a party that stands for something. Now, some people say, well, if we move away from the center, we're going to lose voters. Dude, there are literal socialists currently in the Democratic Party holding office as we speak. It's going to be hard for you to be more extreme than that. Fuck the legacy media and the big tech propaganda that says that you're not allowed to stand for any sort of principles. Trump knows this. His daughter-in-law clearly knows this, if you look at any of her public statements, and Eric will be right along board with that. Much like with Rand Paul running the Senate, how are you supposed to improve upon the current situation? That's what gets the neocons nervous, because they're actually winning. I mean, in the partisan sense, and neocons are they're born and bred to lose, basically. If they do win, it's on an issue where they fundamentally agree with a bunch of neoliberals anyway. Oh yes, absolutely, we need to do a carbon credit thing. Yeah, the Paris Climate Accords are a pretty good idea. Yeah, I want to sleep in a pod and eat the bugs, and I want my constituents to be more poor and go to war. They agree with the Democrats broadly on those issues, you have noticed. But they don't win on any meaningful issue. You get handed a victory and you toss the crown back in the gutter, basically. That's the semi-modern GOP. Let's hope that they can improve. Otherwise, they're going to get cut loose. I'm not going to vote for any Republicans if you cuck out again. That's about all. Peace out.